The audacity. The audacity. I have the audacity. The audacity. The audacity. Audacity. Podcast. Audacity. The 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 audacity.
Hey. Hey, hey, hey. The audacity. 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 Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for sticking around. I'm going to figure this thing out. You heard me. But listen, we got up to a short, little late start, 15 minutes, 14 minutes late. But I want to welcome Aimbriel Lasley, the homeschooling expert of the evening.
I don't know if I'm an expert, but
yeah, I didn't put that on you. You the expert now. How you doing today?
I am well. How are you?
I am fantastic, fantabuloso.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, we just gonna get right into it. And I noticed that you're a vegan too. So you're homeschooling vegan.
I am.
You are dangerous.
A lot. I know.
They're gonna send somebody after you. Just so, speaking of that, so you're blackmamavegan.com. So, do you give out recipes? Do you cook? What do you got going on right there with that?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, run that back what you just said. I had to do my switch.
Oh, okay, to your phone. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. No, I'm good.
Because you kind of frozen on. Oh, there you go. Okay. Yeah, so I was talking about before we get into the school and stuff, I see that that you have a website, blackmamavegan.com.
Yes.
What's going on with that?
So I don't even know.
That a site?
No, it's a site. So about a year after I became vegan, I was getting fielded with so many questions about like, what do you do? Where do you go? Where do you shop? How do you do this? And so I started that website and I wrote a couple of blogs and just talked about, some different recipes that I was kind of experimenting with. And so now it has grown to where I have a few products that I offer. One of the most recent things that I'm super proud of is my ebook. Mm-hmm. So my ebook is called What's for Dinner. And so it's got a few simple recipes in there to kind of walk people through how to make plant-based stuff. It can be very simple, very easy ingredients. So I have that, and I have a couple other things on there. I have a wellness blend on there that I love. That's kind of a replacer for coffee. And then my essential oil blends that I've been wearing on myself, and people have been like, can I buy it? And so now it's on there. So Black Mama Vegan is mostly about education, but I have added a few products.
Okay, cool. Speaking of that, tell me, how important is the diet of a child during their development days, mentally, intellectually, and I mean, even physically?
Yes, so for sure. So by trade, like my schooling education, I'm a lactation consultant. Mm-hmm. So I always try to speak from that point of view. The most optimal nutrition a baby can receive is breast milk from their mother. Mm-hmm. It is specifically made for them. Something that I don't think people realize is that with each pregnancy, your breast milk is specific to that baby. So it's not as though it's, all the same. If you have a singleton and then you have twins, or if you have, every pregnancy is different, and breast milk is specifically for that baby. So optimal nutrition starts at birth and when that baby is born, because when you're feeding your body the things that it was designed to take in to grow it appropriately,
Mm-hmm.
then we don't run into a lot of these issues that we see as far as immune and autoimmune and other chronic diseases and later on in life. So it is it's imperative to do that from the start, but even after that, introducing whole foods into the diet. I mean, it just affects your brain power. If you're eating a lot of fried foods and sugar and, you know, food dyes, you're going to feel sluggish. You're going to have just a lot of other things going on mentally, if it's all of that put together, because your body is just overwhelmed trying to process everything.
And that's going to fall into the baby too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
when I was deep into my Dr. Sebi diet, I learned about like red kale and different plants that had color to it, and how some of that affects the brain. And it affects it in a positive manner. For instance, red kale does something to the brain to where it helps you study better. It helps you retain the information better. And the reason why I asked about the diet is because and I wish I knew the title of this book and the woman that I want to speak of, but it was a book, something about the 10 best people in civilization or something like that. And there was a woman that was a teacher, and over in Germany, this was during Hitler's rule. There was a set of children that were deemed lower than, like, they were lower than learning disabled according to the school system. They was like, we just can't teach these kids. They're going to, they were basically throwing the kids away. And so this teacher stepped in, and she's like, let me take them and teach them my way through my methods. And so the two things that she changed that stood out to me there were almost the top two things that she changed. And one was the diet, where a lot of kids, especially in the inner city, they're not really eating, due to whatever dysfunctional environment or whatever disenfranchisement, whatever's going on at home. They're not really eating like really nutritious meals. It's like a lot of processed fast food and just junk freezer food and, gas station food, stuff like that. And so when they get to school, then they're feeding them French toast sticks, chocolate milk, like a bunch of high fructose corn syrup, and just a bunch of processed foods and sugars. And so she started with the diet. She was like, she started with giving them, like you said, whole foods, nutritional foods that really, your body really, they're absorbing all of the nutrients that really come with this food. And then the second thing was, after they ate, she allowed them to have like an hour and some change worth of recess to burn off all that excess energy, because kids naturally have a bunch of energy. So
Absolutely.
when you have a bunch of energy already, then you compound like sugar, you just like.
Yes.
And so when she let them burn it off, then when they got into the classroom, they were able to sit still and actually consume what information that she was providing them. And so they end up being at a higher level in academia than the people that were already supposedly intellectually superior.
Which is amazing.
Yeah. And I
And
spent time in the school systems here in Georgia. So I was a substitute teacher for a little bit in Indianapolis, Indiana, for a short time. But when I came to Georgia, I was at one point in time I was a contractor for Dell Computers, and we would go into the school systems, the inner city school systems, Fulton County, Cobb County, you name it, and install these computers. And I saw a night and day difference in the inner city schools versus suburban schools. Like the inner city schools, they're feeding them, again, French toast sticks, just a cup of syrup. You got chocolate milk, you got all this bull crap, and then you got the vending machines with all the snickety snick snacks, all the fructose corn syrup. But then when you come up north, where people have more money, there's vitamin water, there's regular water, there's salads, there's, as a matter of fact, the rule for this particular school that I'm talking about, there was no processed foods to be vendored, sold, or passed out at all. Even the teachers couldn't really give that type of stuff.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. Just in kind of like what you were saying, the high fructose corn syrup, and even like I talk about, one of my big things too is food dyes.
Yeah.
Um, it's food dyes. It's, a lot of these companies, they specifically market to children on purpose,
Yeah.
because once you become a customer, when you're a child, you tend to keep buying that product. And so if you ask a lot of adults, why do you use certain things? And it's, well, I've always done it. Right. Because when you were 6, 7, and 8, and you went into the stores, they purposely colored things. They purposely put certain things in a certain way to make you want to buy it. And then all the stuff that they put in it keeps you addicted. It triggers in your brain, this great feeling. And now you just want to keep having that feeling over and over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's important that, we just start seeking information. So tell me this in regard to homeschooling. What are some of the biggest challenges that you face as a homeschooler?
Like when I first started, or just overall currently?
Well, yeah, when you first started, and I'm talking about obstacles that you weren't aware of. Like we can, there's always going to be some type of obstacles with anything you do, especially when it's something outside of the quote unquote norm.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm talking unforeseen obstacles that, when you're going into, you be like, all right, I got this, I got this, I got
Yeah.
this.
I think the biggest thing, one is just living in Indianapolis. There isn't a very large Black homeschool community. So that was a challenge, because when you go to venture out to do that, having community and other people that are doing some of the same things that you're doing is very helpful.
Exactly.
I fortunately had a very good friend who helped me transition into homeschooling, but not everybody has that. So that was a challenge. And then too, I would say the biggest challenge is it was changing the mindset of being in school, because I went through public school. So that's all I know is, right, you go to school, you're at school for 8 hours, like you're supposed to do all of these different things. And when you homeschool, depending on the type of homeschooling you want to do, you have to change the mindset of what teaching and learning looks like, because you are now home with your kids all day, and you actually have to learn them and learn how they learn. And when they're in school, you don't really get that chance to see them interact on all day, and how they handle certain aspects of school, how they handle reading. Do they actually interpret what they're doing? So the biggest challenge, I think, was just not really understanding how to homeschool them, because I had to relearn. It's almost like relearning your child. I had to relearn who they were as a student, in order to help them move forward in the strengths that I now know that they have.
So that's way different. And I would even step out and say those 2 steps right there are far better than any institution that I've ever been in. And I say that because when you go to these institutions, you're basically given a template,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody's forced to study in this template. And socially and culturally, people learn differently.
Yes.
And if you don't learn how this template tells you to learn, then they're typically going to throw you in the learner disabled group, or reprimand you and do all these other things. When I got a cousin who, when she was younger, she was dyslexic,
Mm-hmm.
and she just could not get it right. And it took them a while before they figured out that she was dyslexic. But
Mm-hmm.
prior to that, she was just getting like bad grades. Like they was like, oh, something's wrong with her. But
Mm-hmm.
as homeschooling, you get to get that attention that you need.
Absolutely.
And there's no like you get the whole day to do this, so you're not stuck. So it's almost, it just, as an adult, it just looks like you're just on this manufacturing line when
Absolutely.
you in the schools.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what you have to, especially for our Black children, especially for our Black boys, kind of like what you were saying, kids have energy, boys have lots of energy, and sometimes that's seen as, oh, they have ADHD. They are very quick to prescribe something or diagnose you with something. And it's like, no, they need time to have energy. And when you're in school, you get 30 minutes for recess, you got popped back in, and then you're expected to sit down. And it's like 30 minutes isn't enough.
Yeah.
It's not enough. And, you know, and again, when you are transitioning from your brain of this is what school looked like to homeschool, it's kind of difficult. You almost question yourself like, man, like, should I let them play for 2 hours today? Because in school, they didn't get to play for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, once you realize like, no, they're learning while they're playing and they're learning all these different skills. You don't have to conform to that. It's just, yeah.
So speaking of that, they're playing and learning. Mm-hmm. How would you say, so here's one of the biggest misconceptions that I hear whenever I tell somebody that if I do have kids, I'm interested in homeschooling. There's two top things that people spew out of their mouths without a doubt. Mm-hmm. They say, I wouldn't do that because I wouldn't be able to socialize my kid. They would be weird. And then they'll say, I can't afford that. And so to my rebuttal to both of those is, how do you know? Have you actually sat in on a homeschooling, a cooperative, or because that's not true.
It's not true. And I was just having this conversation with someone recently because that socialization thing, the amount of times that I get that when I tell people that I homeschool, and I'm like, that's just, to me, if for some reason a child isn't socialized or they seem socially awkward, that's the parent's responsibility. Mm-hmm. Because they literally kept them at home and you literally didn't go out places. But homeschooling is meant to be a lifestyle. So you learn everywhere you go. It's not just doing a worksheet or sitting in front of a computer or reading this book and having to write an essay about it. Not saying those things are bad, but when you're actually trying to get the most out of homeschooling, you socialize every time you leave the house. When you go to the grocery store, you know, my 7-year-olds know how to talk to adults. They know how to ask for things. They know how to advocate for themselves because they get practice every time we go out. We go to the park. We go to the children's museums. We are in a co-op now. We take trips. It's about the effort that you put in to get your kids in different spaces for them to interact with a wide variety of people, not just 7-year-olds all day. They get to interact with people who are 40, who are 50, who are 10, who are 13, and they're learning how they need to kind of maneuver in those different situations. So in a way, they are getting more life skills by being able to kind of switch and know how to interact with all these different ages of people.
And that's interesting that you frame it like that, because when you think of anything that you want to get good at, anything that you want to be supreme, superior, whatever, mm-hmm. you go and you intermingle with those that are far superior than you.
Exactly.
So if the goal is to optimize the level of intelligence of a child progressively, mm-hmm. it wouldn't be, in my mind, to sit them in a stagnant room, and I mean a static room that's not, you just you know. Right. I never liked that baby talk. Like whenever I was with my niece and nephews, I would do a little bit of it. I'd be like, hey, you know, I'm trying to talk regular. But yeah. Now you did speak of co-ops, and I'm mm-hmm. familiar with them, but explain to the audience what a homeschooling cooperative is.
Sure. So cooperative learning is basically a situation where parents are directly involved in the education of their child. So I'll even rewind back a little bit. When my boys did preschool, they did a co-op preschool. And so what that involved was me signing up for maybe 1 or 2 days in a month where I came in and I was kind of like a supervisor. I didn't actually teach anything, but I just kind of helped supervise and kind of mediate with the other kids. But the kids kind of led their day. They got to decide if they wanted to go into the quiet room or the busy room. They kind of got to do, move how they wanted. And it's kind of the same concept now that they're older in a homeschool co-op, is that it's it's child led and driven. So a lot of the subjects or things that we may cover come from the ideas of the kids. What do they want to do? And the parents are there to help mediate and facilitate. At times we may teach a subject. So if we feel strongly about something, or we feel like we're an expert in an area, we may teach that lesson. Like for instance, March was National Nutrition Month. It's also National Women's History Month, but National Nutrition Month, I taught the lessons for March because I felt like that was kind of my expert area. And so I was able to involve the kids and get them involved in learning about nutrition and different aspects of it and all of that. We also take trips together. So in your co-op, you take field trips together. You learn about different things. Ours is very Black centered, so we learn about African American history, and we go to where the culture is. So it just depends on the type of co-op that you're involved in. You want to make sure that you're lining up with something that is consistent kind of with your values and where you see your children growing.
So scholastically, have you noticed the difference?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. It's so interesting that when I have let them lead their learning, how much more they retain information. Because a lot of times in public school, you're just taking in information to spit it back out. You know, you're retaining it for a moment just to spit it back out. But a lot of the things that my kids are learning, they're learning it because they're very interested in it and they want to learn it. And then they're able to explain it to me in a way, in their own words. And they're able to kind of maneuver within grade level or they're able to maneuver themselves between difficulty. You know, my oldest son, he's 9, you know, he can read at a 6th grade level, and he can comprehend pretty much at a 6th grade level because he's kind of taught himself some different things, and we have open conversations about what certain words mean, or just in our conversation period that sticks in his brain. So then when he goes to read a book or do something, he'll go, oh man, we talked about that. And he's able to make the connection. So scholastically, they are just really taking in information and then retaining it for themselves and then using it as they need to.
Now, do you do year-round homeschooling, or you just stick with the school year as it pertains to public school system?
I mean, like I was saying, learning happens all day, every day. So, do we take breaks? Sure. But we're always learning. Like when they're in the kitchen with me and I'm cooking or baking, like they're learning how to measure. They're learning how to read fractions. Like, so there's never really a time where there's a break. I just try, they're learning and they don't realize they're learning because it's so much fun.
Right.
So it's like, technically it's a break if we're not doing anything super official, but they're always learning. So yeah.
So, oh man, I just had a brain fart. It was going to be a good question too. So have you ever dealt with, well, I mean, you know your kids, but in the cooperative, have you ever dealt with a child that seems unmanageable, like maybe too hyper or all over the place? And if so, how? Give the parents some tips, because I know some parents that struggle from time to time with keeping their children focused and you know, staying in and they're not homeschoolers per se, but they're at this particular time in life. You know, they're doing the web schooling.
They're schooling at home. They're schooling at home.
Right. But yeah, so you have to do some level of homeschooling in that.
Yeah.
Even if you're streaming live with the teacher.
For sure. So I just had this conversation with somebody last week. One of the things I would say is to sit down with your child and just say, okay, these are the things that you're supposed to get done, right? You're supposed to hop on Zoom on these days, or you're supposed to do this work. Involve them in what their schedule will look like. So don't just say, okay, you need to sit down and do this, you know, before it's time. Just say, okay, this is what you need to get done today. What does that look like to you? Mm-hmm. Do you feel like maybe we could do some of it in the morning? Let's take a a break in the afternoon and you finish it up in the evening? Does it look like you don't start your day until 11 o'clock? Maybe you just need time to kind of get up and just kind of take your time. I feel like that's really important. And again, because when kids are in school, their little brains have to constantly be on. They're constantly turning. They're always interacting with all these other kids. Then they've got this, their authority, their teacher. And then they have specials, and they're interacting with 5 or 6 other teachers. And so their brains are constantly having to interact. And so now that it doesn't, I feel like people may think like, oh my gosh, these kids are just out of control. And it's like, no, they've been so locked into having to do all this stuff in a certain way that now they have freedom and they're not really sure what to do with it. So kind of let them have that freedom. They need a little bit of a brain break, but let's sit down and say, okay, these are the things that you have to get done. And in order to get these things done, or in order for you to have your free time in the evening, let's figure out a schedule that can work for everybody. And even me being a primary homeschooler, I still do that because there are some things that I don't negotiate on. You got to learn how to type. Like, that's just a given. I'm not negotiating that with you. You're going to have to read every day. Reading is knowledge that you take in. I'm not negotiating that with you. What does that look like, though? Do you want to get up and go outside and shoot around and play basketball or climb around on the deck for an hour first? I'm cool with that. And then when you come back in, get a snack and then start your day. So I think when you are able to involve the kids in their schedule, it kind of gives them some ownership. And they know that, okay, I got to get this done, because if I don't get it done, then mom already told me that I can't hop on the Xbox, or I can't play Minecraft, or I can't do this. And just how do I organize the day? I think that's really key for kids to take a little bit of ownership in it.
Yeah. That's teaching responsibility and accountability. Something that grown people still don't know.
Yes.
Speaking towards the book topic, what are your views on homes that have a gazillion television and no books? How do you view the development of that mind?
That's hard, because you're teaching, to me, this is my personal opinion, you're teaching them that technology is always the way to have an outlet. I think technology has a time and a place. I think it's useful. I think it is good sometimes to just kind of watch a show that you like. But if that's your primary way of dealing with something, or your primary way of spending your downtime, I think you lose out on the opportunity to learn something new, to expand your vocabulary, especially for kids, because they can learn a lot and have the ability to learn and absorb if we give them the tools to do it. But if you're only giving them one tool, and that's the television, their other parts of their brain and their development aren't being stimulated. Mm-hmm. So in my house, we have 2 TVs, and that's by accident. We have one TV in our living room, and the other is in our bedroom, because we don't have anywhere else to put it. I mean, we could put it away, but we really don't watch TV in our bedroom. And so, and our TV in our living room only comes on typically Friday nights. We have family fun night.
Your audio went out. Hello? Can you hear me? I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, it's I feel like you just limit the ability for them to be stimulated and learn how to have other ways to have downtime.
Right. So I envision my family that I don't have right now yet. I would love to have like nights where we discuss the books that we read.
Yeah.
That would help with a larger bonding tool, as well as you actually, it makes learning fun at that particular, at that moment. You know, it's not boring anymore because, Dad, what you learn? He'd be like, well, son, you know what I'm saying? I learned
Yeah,
this.
yeah. And another important aspect is reading aloud. You know, kids still, they like to be read to. So even my 9-year-old and the 7-year-old, like my husband has been telling them stories since they were babies before they could ever understand. And even now they're still like, Daddy, can you come tell us the story about, you know, so like even getting a book that maybe they can't read themselves, but you reading aloud to them allows you to have that discussion, you know, about what did you think about that? Or, you know, did you learn a new word in that? It just brings out, like you were saying, that bonding time and that chance for them to be like, oh man, that's really neat. I never knew that.
And in that bonding time, that creates, especially if you're going to be a homeschooling parent,
Yeah.
that creates a bond to where there's a thicker level of respect between the two, the child and the parent. So when the parent, once you build that bond, our parents say, all right, Joe, read this. And even if they don't want to, they're gonna be like, oh, okay, Mom, I don't really want to, but I'll do it.
I'll do it. Yep.
You know, opposed to having that do what I say, and they be like, I ain't doing it. And then now, you know, class is over because Rob got it.
Exactly. Yeah, no, for sure.
So that do you constantly check the temperature of your children as far as what they want to be when they grow up? Like, are you constantly like just doing a checkup like, hey, what you want to be? You said you wanted to do this. How are we going to do this? And I asked that because growing up, all I heard was you can do whatever it is that you want to do in your life. The sky's the limit. That was like a generic blanket statement from almost every adult that I came in contact with. But by saying that, nobody ever gave me any blueprints to hey, this is what you can do this. And so what I like to do, or what I used to do whenever I'm around children, so what you want to do when you grow up? And then whatever they say, I'll say, okay, so what steps are you taking to acquire that, to obtain that goal? Whereas a lot of when I look at a lot of my peers that are parents, it's almost like the steering wheel is right here for the child, but they're in the passenger seat.
Yeah.
And the child is doing the driving. And I'm like, what's happening here? Like, you have the controls right now. And once you get to a particular time in this child's life, you will no longer have the control. Everything is up to what he or she decides that they want to do. And go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I'm not constantly checking their temperature on it, but what I try to do is observe what they tend to kind of gravitate towards, I will say. So if I have one of my boys really loves science, he likes learning about all like different concepts, or he likes dogs. And so I was like, oh, well, did you know that you could volunteer at the Humane Society? He was like, no. So, well, let's look into it. And then did you know, about the different careers? So kind of what you were saying is I gauge it and kind of see what they gravitate towards. And then I expose them and say, hey, do you know that a person does that for a living and it's called X? You want to look at that? You want to find some videos about what that is? And then I just kind of gauge their interest and see it. I'm kind of taking my time with it because I feel like sometimes if we ask that question too soon and too often, it just becomes a drag, and they almost feel like they have to live up to something, and they're not even sure what it is. And so if you kind of give them time to explore lots of different things, but engage it and just say, oh, did you know this? And it just kind of puts a deposit in their brain like, I didn't know that, but now I do. And if they want to revisit it, then let's engage it. Let's really get into it. But if it's kind of like, oh, okay, that was good to know, I didn't know that, then you can leave it where it is versus, well, you said you wanted to do this, now we're going to do this, because it's just too much pressure.
So what would you say that your children, what do you know what they want to do at this particular juncture?
So one of my boys, one of my twins, baby B is what I call him. Baby B has said from the age of 4 that he wanted to be a baker. He wants to bake, and that's what he wants to do. And he's 7, and he will go downstairs and bake donuts. And he wants to watch baking videos. And so that's part of his homeschooling, right? So he knows how to, at 7, he knows how to search for recipes on my Pinterest. He knows how to read the ingredients. He knows what the ingredients are. He knows how to read fractions. He knows how to measure. He knows the measuring spoons. Okay, if you want to be a baker, that's kind of the direction you're moving in. Let's go with that. So like, I just use him as a prime example because he's kind of really taken on that this is what I want to do, and he practices what he wants to do. For the other ones, like I said, my oldest son, he's really into science. He just loves to learn information. So, but science is kind of his big thing. He wants to know how things work and all of that. So I just kind of let him watch science videos and watch science experiments and explain to me what it is that he learned. And my baby A has said he wants to be a police officer. He has said that since he was 4. We don't have police officers in our family. I have no idea where it came from, but I've asked him, and people have asked him on different occasions, and he says, I want to be a police officer. I want to help people. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Well, and that's really good that they all have a sense of direction already, even though it may change, it may not change. But
yeah.
A lot of times when you ask kids what you want to be when you grow up, and they'll say, I want to be an NFL player, NBA player, I want to be a rapper. I remember at one point, oh man, she probably gonna get mad at me for telling this. I was over at my cousin's house, and she was playing BET. It was like music videos, and the little daughter was watching it. And just I wasn't paying it. I think I had just come into the house or something. I don't know, but the little girl was watching it. And she's like, "Mommy, I want to be I want to be one of those when I grow up." And it was a dancer. It was a BET, one of those booty shaking dancers. And the mom got upset and was like, "Don't you ever let me hear you say that again." And then in my mind, I'm like, "But this is what she's being fed." So if you constantly keep your child in the TV looking at athletes, looking at entertainers, it's glossy. It's so shimmery, and it's so it's such a big deal. So yeah, naturally, that's what you're gonna want to aspire to, instead of a scientist, a lawyer, an engineer, or a developer, and things like that. And those are the things that's really going to take you over the edge, because even you can be all of those and still be an entertainer. You can do whatever it is that you want to do, but focus on something that's solid,
Absolutely. And that takes me back to the whole TV thing. If that's all you're watching and seeing, then that's what your reality becomes. So whatever you're exposed to the most, and like you were saying, whatever you're fed the most, that becomes your reality. Yeah. So when you're fed, science, or reading, or playing outdoors and learning about, the earth, and learning about like that starts to become your reality. Versus, like you said, some of the other artificial things that we see on television that are made up or that aren't true to our reality.
So tell me, what was it in you that made you make the decision to say, you know what, I want to start homeschooling my children?
Oh man, I'm gonna keep it brief. So I have 4 children. My daughter is older. And so it wasn't really a thought with her. I was in a different place in life with her, and for her, school worked, and it worked well. But then in this, kind of climate that we've kind of evolved in, and raising 3 Black boys, I just felt that I needed to do something different for them. I wanted them to be comfortable with who they were. I wanted for them to identify with themselves and be strong in that. And I wanted them to not feel like they have to go to the beat of somebody else's drum. And I knew, and call me crazy, but like for my 9-year-old, he's really busy. He has a lot of energy. He's really busy. He's just, he likes to stand when he reads, he's swaying at the dinner table when he's eating his food. Like that's just him. And I could foresee him having issues in school. because once you get past first grade, that shit don't fly. You know what I'm saying? They want you to sit down. You need to sit down. You need to do this. And you got to be in this uniform. And he's very intelligent, but he just needs to learn in his own way. And I didn't want his intelligence to be hindered by following a rule book that isn't meant for everybody to follow. And so for him, and then like I said, just the twins too, I just was like, you know, I have the opportunity to do it. And I want them just to get the most out of learning who they are and being comfortable with who they are, and finding their own way.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like you're setting them up already for that. When you speak to the parents that might be sort of inquisitive about homeschooling, do you ever talk about some of the tricks and traps that are laid for people that don't know about these tricks and traps? Do you talk about things like the school to prison pipeline?
Yeah, I do. Being like we were kind of talking about before we got on, I worked in the school system for about 8 years, and I taught for 3 of those 8 years. And just understanding and seeing how some of these kids were, they were just skipped over. They were skipped over. They weren't given the attention that they needed. And then, you know, they do, if you're not, you know, able to read by the time you're second grade, or if you're not able to pass your I-step in third grade, you've already on the path to prison. Like you're already predetermined to go down this pathway. You're not going to graduate. These are the things that are going to happen if you aren't hitting these certain milestones by this certain age. And again, it disproportionately affects Black children. And it disproportionately affects us because we aren't, I'm not going to get super deep in this, but
you can get as deep as you want to get. This is the audacity.
Black people we're very intelligent people. And we are very talented, and we're very we're good with our hands. We're mathematicians. We're all of these things. And from history till now, we've been put into a system to make us fit into a box, to learn it a certain way, when we were already built with what we needed to be successful. And I feel like because we don't fit in their box all the time the way they want it to look, then we get written off, and we just are put into a situation where maybe I need a little bit of extra time to read this, but that doesn't mean I'm not smart. Or maybe I need somebody to speak it to me versus me reading it. It doesn't mean that I'm any less smart than the next person. I just learn differently. And so I do talk about that a lot. And I'm very comfortable talking about that with anybody, because I've had a lot of white friends or people say, you know, why are you homeschooling? I said, because I'm raising 3 Black boys. And the system is not really built for my children to thrive in a way that I think they should. And I'm unapologetic about it because it's the truth. So, yeah.
And then you have people say, well, it's good for everybody.
Yeah, you will. And like I said, and I'm not, at the end of it all, I'm not knocking public education, because I'm a public education kid. Like, and I think that for the time that I went through school, I think it was cool. It was good. I had a good experience. Did I learn a lot of shit that I don't need? Yes. But
Do I
remember?
No, I'm just playing.
Right. Do I remember all of it? Absolutely not. You know, I remember the relationships I built, though. And I remember being a part of a team, maybe playing sports. And I remember some of those key things. But And so when you start to talk to people in that manner, it sometimes starts to click, like, man, you're right. Like, I don't remember my junior year, algebra 2 class. I don't remember all that stuff. I don't use it. But what do you use? You use the skills to talk to people, to build relationships, to learn how to navigate difficult situations, those types of things. So, and I'm just like, in homeschool, you get to do that all the time, every day. That's a skill that you need to know.
In homeschooling, you're able to actually, just like you said, teach kids what they need to know, like balancing your account, credit, stuff that you actually going to use that we're exploited on because we don't know nothing about it. And now this is a phrase where I can say almost everybody, but some groups, they get the game a little quicker, like, hey, this is what you do, and they get it,
Yes.
and they get hands-on experience.
Yes. And those are things that I'm teaching my boys already. They have stock accounts. And so we talk about, what is a stock? What's in your account? What does that look like? They have we look at their savings account. How do you save money? What is a check? Like, we're very transparent with them in, money matters and learning about finances and all those things, because a lot of times, especially in our community, that's kept secret. You don't talk about it, you don't learn about, but it's like, why not? They need to know what to do and how to navigate it. And you can break it down to their level. I'm not saying we talk about taxes and how to W-9s and all that.
You got to diversify your portfolio, son.
Right. Like, yeah, we don't get that deep, but just high level, just to even have the nugget planted, be like, oh, mommy said I had, because one time they were like, oh, mommy, what's my stock, my stock portfolio? I was like, oh yeah, let's open it up. Let's look at it. They don't really understand the full concept, but the fact that they know that it's something that exists.
So tell the listeners how much preparation one needs to have to be successful at homeschooling. And in my mind, it would start, the preparation would start before you even get pregnant. But even the preparation before you get pregnant, leading up to when the baby's like, all right, we doing this. Pop locking in your lap.
Right. So, I'm such an educator, so I try not to overwhelm people. But when you
give us the business,
I know, right? When you're pregnant, when you decide, okay, I'm pregnant, I'm going to have, a family, or whatever, things just happen. It's understanding your options. That's what it really comes down to with everything. Understanding your options. When you get pregnant, you don't have to go to a hospital to give birth. Like, you can have a home birth. You can go to a birth center. You can have a midwife. You don't have to have a physician. Like, it all starts with understanding your options. And I think that's one of the things too that sometimes gets missed, is that homeschooling doesn't even seem like an option. You get pregnant, you have the kids, they go to daycare, they go to school, the end. And it's understanding that from the beginning, that you have other options. What does that look like for you? Now, I'm not saying it's going to be perfect and it's going to work. It may not, but at least understanding the options so you can make an informed choice is what's going to help you determine your path. So, you prepare for the baby, you go through birthing education, you get your breastfeeding education in, you do all those things. And then when you have the baby, it's okay, we've gone through this. What is it? What is the true picture or the ultimate outcome I would like to see for my kids? Because you have to understand that your children are not you. So the path that you took will not necessarily be the path that's right for them. But overall, as a human being, what are some of the key things that you want them to be able to say, man, I'm really glad that I had X? And does that involve them going to public school, or does that involve them being homeschooled, or some type of way that may be different than what you're used to? And that's the ultimate thing, like I was talking about earlier, is that I don't want my kids to feel like they have to follow somebody else's beat. I want them to be able to be strong in who they are and go by their beat. And yes, you're going to have to interact with other people, and you're going to have to be able to, overcome conflict. But if you are firm in who you are and what you stand for, you have a better chance of moving in the direction that's going to be best for you. And what's going to work for you. So that would be my biggest thing, is just understanding what your options are and exploring all of them, and then saying, okay, this is what I think could work.
So if somebody wanted to do exactly what you've done, as far as being the homeschooler, everything that you've done, could you list like maybe a few steps that they could do today to get the ball running? So it's like, when I tell kids, I'll be like, you need to work on creating a business, whatever that you're good at. And then most people just say that and then leave it alone. Whereas you can be like, no, you go to the Secretary of State, you get you apply for your LLC, you pay the fees, you apply for your EIN number, you register your name. Like, actually given step by step, so people can actually, like I said, get the ball started, even if they don't follow through with it tonight, just so they can write down some notes on what they can do if that's something that they wanted to activate in their lives.
Yeah. So I would say one of the first things to do is write out your why. Why do you want to homeschool?
Mm-hmm.
What's the motivation behind it? That would be the first reason. The first step. The second step would be to then you try to find other people that are doing what you're doing. If it's nobody immediately there that you can touch, that's in your circle, then that utilize your internet. Get involved in some groups, find some groups. Almost everybody's on some type of social media platform. So Google something, get on Facebook, search those groups, try to find other people that are doing what you want to do, which is homeschool. So get connected in those groups. Because even I'm involved in some groups, homeschool groups on Facebook. And there are people that I know that don't homeschool that are still in those groups just to glean information or to try to get some insight. So definitely connecting with people that you know who are doing what you want to do. The third thing I would say is just to
Your audio went out again.
primary, income. But and so, we're not traveling every few months for vacation. We're not doing a whole lot of elaborate things, but I knew that going into it because it was more important for me to be home with my children, to give them the opportunity to learn in a way that will be good for them and give them a good foundation environment, than for us to maybe do some other things. Not saying that we don't ever do it, but you just have to figure out if it works for your family or how you can make it work. So at one point in time, I was working a couple nights a week. So I was working a couple nights a week. So I had to make sure I had everything, try to get things done. My husband would come home, I would go to work, and then the next day we'd get up and do it all over again. So just making sure that it's going to work. It can work for you in your situation. And the last thing I would say is just, take your time and be patient with yourself, because it's a process. You never get to a point in homeschooling where you've got it all figured out, because things are
Neither does
constantly
your
changing.
twos.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying. Neither do they. So don't put this I think some people feel like I've got to have it all figured out. I've got to be this perfect lesson planner. And it's like, just like you evolve, throughout the months or the years, your children evolve. So don't feel like you've got to have this master plan, this grand plan of this is the curriculum we're going to use and we're going to do it this way. Because 6 months in, it may change, and that's okay. You have to be willing to be flexible with it. So give yourself grace and patience, and give your kids grace and patience.
Okay. So there's also one thing that I would that I remember talking to my nephew before he graduated high school. I think I started talking to him when he was like a freshman or sophomore. And one thing that I told him, that it was important that if he was going to go to college, that right now it would really be imperative if he were to learn some type of trade that would give him an adult wage as he was in school. And the one thing that I told him was, because he had a barbering program at his high school, I said, go get into that program. Even if you go to college, that's cool, but you can pay for your college with this haircut money. You can buy
Yep.
your clothes with this haircut money, because you would be 18 in college making what 30 and 40-year-old men make to sustain a family. He didn't do it for whatever for his own reasons or whatever, but going forward, like I and that's one thing that I wanted to do for the children that I have when I eventually have them, is
Mm-hmm.
teach them how to be self-sufficient, so that
Mm-hmm.
when it comes time, if you make the decision where you want to go to higher learning, we're not going to get you ball and chain with these student loans.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you have all this ability and this talent and this know-how with whatever
Mm-hmm.
it is that you're talented to doing. So do you find yourself that, well, let me ask this. Would you be like a sort of a consultant for homeschooling, or are you?
I don't know if I could be a consultant for it. I feel like I'm not deep enough in the game. I mean, this is my 3rd year. I guess I could. I don't necessarily consult. I just try to give people what I had from my friend, which was, try to give them some pointers on how to be patient, like, and how to just kind of take your time and just kind of, whatever, because I feel like there is this huge push for college and you got to go and you got to get this degree. And I'm not teaching my kids that. Like, it's an option, like you were saying, if you want to go, then for sure go. But I want to make sure that they're sound in the life skills and stuff that matter. So if you find that you really like working with your hands or doing these certain things as you get older, you might not have to go to college for that. Like with computers, like once I figured out, like, okay, I went and got this computer science degree, but then I went to this technology school and got certified in these areas. Like, I could have skipped 4 years, got certified in A+ network. You see what I'm saying? And made more money.
Oh my gosh.
And made more money. But I didn't know that. And so now that I'm equipped with that information, no, you ain't got to go. If you want to do that, okay. All you got to do is go to this school, get certified in 6, 8 months, 10 months, even a year. You're going to make the same, if not more money by doing this route. So yes.
I'm in the IT field too, and when I see the directors and the presidents, the vice presidents of these large institutions with high school diplomas,
oh yeah,
like the life is just drained out of me. You mean to tell me I spent 5.5 years, 3 universities, being damn near homeless, and I didn't need to? And as a matter of fact, you get those certificates and you end up spending way less.
Way less.
I'm about to cry right now.
It is a sore spot in my house. Like, I want to break down in tears almost every time because I paid off my technical school like that. My student loans for my bachelor's degree, it's not moving nowhere anytime soon.
They're gonna be hitting me up in the afterlife, like, we need you to get back here soon, because you still owe $1 million.
It's just, but yeah, and I think we just have to overall reframe that conversation with people. Is college, can it be a useful tool? Yes, but what are you going for? Mm-hmm. Do I have to go there to get to the ultimate goal? Most times you don't, unless you're highly specialized. If you're going to be a physician, a surgeon, even an engineer, like those things that are kind of specialized, go. If you just trying to bake or you want to be a marketing, like you ain't really got to go and spend all this money on this degree. You can find courses and things like that.
And that's where the environment of the child comes in, because I went to school. When I went to school, matter of fact, before I set out a year of high school, because initially I didn't want to go to college. But then I found myself working in these warehouses and these factories where the majority of the adults were crackheads or drunks. And I was like, I don't want to give the rest of my life to this factory.
Yeah.
So then one of my friends showed me a college party on the VHS tapes. And I was like, I see a bunch of women. I need to be there. So that's what took me. But I already knew that I wanted to be in one of two fields, and that was either healthcare or the technology field.
For sure.
The only reason why I didn't go into the healthcare field is because I cannot stand to see anybody else's blood. So that kind of, okay, well, then you go in the technological route. And so when I see a bunch of kids going to college and they general studies, like they don't know what they want to be, that shows that, and no disrespect to the parents, but you didn't pay attention to your kids. Because if you were in the child's life, if you were working hands-on, and not to say that they weren't in the lives, but I'm talking about doing that temperature check. Hey, I see you like doing this. Would you you gotta really take the wheel, parents, and stop letting these kids have the wheel. Because if you just putting all these distractions in their face, then you say, all right, so what you want to do? Oh no. Well, it's go time now, champ. You got to pay some bills.
Exactly.
You are a full-grown adult. You eating up all the snacks.
See, and I ain't got time. because there's 6 people over here and we ain't about to eat up all the snacks.
Take a day off from eating around here. You ain't contributing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so tell me there in Indianapolis, are you familiar with any or the organizations that you are connected with? Could you give their information for the listeners?
Yeah, for homeschooling?
Yes.
Yeah, so the co-op we're involved with is Abu Bakari Scholars, ABUBAKARI, Abu Bakari Scholars. And Abu Bakari was a famous explorer, which is who the co-op, well, the foundation is named after. So it's a foundation, and co-op is an aspect of the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's who we are involved with here in Indianapolis. Black World Schoolers. So Natalie Pipkin, shout out to Natalie Pipkin of Black World Schoolers. She's here local in Indianapolis. She does a lot with trying to connect Black families and getting them together for different, just kind of getting together and talking about different things or doing different activities. She also does a lot of traveling with her kids and family, and she shares about what they do and what they learn. So she's awesome to follow on Instagram, Black World Schoolers. Holistic Learning at Home is another Instagram page to follow. So that is my good friends who got me started on my homeschool journey, and she created like a homeschool kit, but it's very holistic. So she, again, a lot of learning about your kids, what do they like to do, and so it's just a small kit that you can just kind of go through and evaluate things together with your kids and really learn them for who they are to help with your homeschooling journey. So that's Holistic Learning at Home on Instagram. What else? So a lot of Indiana is actually a good place to homeschool. It's very liberal in their homeschooling rules. So there's not like any curriculum requirement or anything like that. You are free to kind of teach your child how you want. The only requirement is to school for 180 days. But again, your homeschool can look like whatever you want. But the Children's Museum, the Indiana State Museum, or Newfields now, the art centers, a lot of places have homeschool programs. And they have the Children's Museum in particular has homeschool curriculum online, so you can print off things or try to borrow some activities that they have. So there's tons to do here in the city to get your kid involved and to keep them active.
Okay. Listeners, you can type your questions into the comments because we're about to go to the Q&A. So tell me, what is the ultimate goal for your version of homeschooling? Like, even after your children have graduated and moved on, do you still want to sort of participate in that, or you gonna be like, I'm done?
No, I would love to be like, kind of like you were saying, consultative for people and just kind of help people on their journey and getting started. Because I know how I was. I was like, I can't do that. I don't understand. I can't afford it. We kind of touched on that earlier. And so again, it's just learning what homeschool actually is. So again, just being an educator, I just want to help people on their journey and getting started. So I would definitely want to help and just, making homeschool a more viable option for people and making it more accessible for people. But just like with a lot of things, just bring it to the forefront to educate people on what it actually is and what it can look like, instead of this kind of standard definition of what people have perceived it to be.
So, as far as the curriculum, do you still have to follow? Do you still have to take the same tests that the public school students have?
Nope.
Huh.
And that was another big plus. One of the reasons why too is that I just feel like there's a lot of anxiety that gets created around these tests that aren't, that again, is just not conducive for every kid. Yeah. I mean, the stuff that's on the test, like, it's just, it's just a lot. And so, no, now if they were ever in a position where they were going back to school, then they would have to take whatever necessary test at that point. But no, while they're in school, they're not required to take the ECA or I-Step Plus, or, it changes every year. So whatever it is at that point.
So how do they graduate?
So I haven't got that far yet. I've looked at it, but you can test out. So at 16, you're able to take the high school equivalency exam, the HSE. And so you could always just take that HSE and graduate that way, and be done with high school. You can, I think it's you partnering with your local high school. So there are times where you can go and take classes there at your high school, or seeing what what type of relationship does that township have with the homeschool community, to where will they allow your child to go through the process of homeschooling if you have certain records that have been kept. But I haven't really gotten too deep in it since my boys are kind of young.
Okay. So is it a possibility, or have you witnessed where homeschooled students graduate faster?
For sure.
How fast?
Yeah. I've seen, students who graduate when they're 13, 14, because they're zipping through the curriculum. They're just learning things super fast. They understand it. And they're able to graduate from high school in their early teens.
So if they graduate from high school early,
mm-hmm.
and they're absorbing all this information and are actually retaining it,
mm-hmm.
then I think it's safe to assume that they can go into college and test out of those prerequisites,
mm-hmm.
and potentially graduate from college quicker too, right?
Absolutely. And colleges, like I said, I've done a little bit of research on that higher level education, but colleges are actually looking more for homeschool students, and they actually prefer homeschool students, one, because they have a better retention rate. And two, because they're able to interact with their professors, and they're able to, they're just better students overall, typically, when they come from a homeschool environment. So even the Ivy League schools like a Stanford and a Yale and IU, these places have homeschool applications. So it says if you're a homeschool student, they typically take you through like a little bit of a separate application process. But they are looking for those students because those students know how to learn. They know how to think for themselves. They know how to think outside of the box, and they are more likely to have better retention rates.
So let me get this straight. Because here's the thing. I've been promoting homeschooling for
mm-hmm.
the longest, just based off of my own interactions
mm-hmm.
and the studying that I've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I would advocate on Facebook. I would do that, especially when I worked in the school systems. And I don't know if you would be surprised, but y'all would be surprised on how much pushback I got. And it just wasn't regular, like, I don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man, you would have thought I talked about somebody's mama. But
mm-hmm.
in my mind, when I hear people that have children say, man, my life has changed. This little person is so precious. And when you speak about children at such a high magnitude, like you would give your life for them.
Mm-hmm.
Why would homeschooling be a problem if you graduate high school quicker, graduate mm-hmm. college quicker, retain mm-hmm. information longer? And colleges are looking for those who have graduated or went through homeschooling because of all these other attributes. Why is it that we fight that?
It's intimidating. It's against the norm. So I always say, me and my friend always say, like, we're little black sheep because we're vegan and we homeschool and we're Black. So like we have all these things. We're Black vegan homeschoolers. Mm-hmm. But it's very intimidating. It's not what we're used to. It's not norm, right? It's not spoken about. You don't see a lot of Black people who are vegan. You don't see a lot of Black people who are homeschooling. It's not something that's really talked about a lot, at least here in the Midwest. Now, in the South and some different states, like, that's kind of a big thing. But if we're just talking specifically about here in Indiana, you don't really see it. And so if you don't see it and that's not how you grew up and that wasn't your normal, then again, it's odd, it's intimidating. And because we think of homeschooling as school, it's extremely intimidating for me to think that I have to sit and teach my child for 7 hours a day, or to keep them entertained, or do this. And I just couldn't be capable of doing that. And it's like, but you birthed these little people, you know what I'm saying? And you're their first teacher. But I think we lose sight of that once they go to school, is that, okay, I taught you this little bit, now you go learn from somebody else, which I'm not saying is bad, but you have to think, like, you have some faith in yourself that you're able to do this. You birthed this little person, and you just have to have faith in yourself and not let it intimidate you out of doing it.
So we have a question from Ashandra Jean. She asked, is there a formal process that a family has to go through if they decide to transition from a traditional school system to a homeschool system?
Yes. So, well, it's formal, but it's not. So you go to the Indiana Department of Education, for instance, and you go to like their homeschool tab, and you basically fill out like a demographic short like application. And it says, it'll ask you what township are you coming from. It'll ask you your children and their ages. And once it's processed, they send you a homeschool ID. And that's pretty much it. You can notify the school, or the school will be notified because you've registered through the system. But that's pretty much what it is. It's not, that's about it. I thought it was more involved than that, but again, in Indiana, other places have different rules, but here that's pretty much it.
See, and this is one of the reasons why I was really excited about bringing you on, is because we've been able to dispel so many misconceptions. That there's, at this particular point, for the people that are watching and listening, there's no real I mean, I don't know what y'all got going on, but I know for myself, like, that is something that it's like part. So in my mind, as an adult that used to be a child, and I see the things that were voided in my life just based off of either resources or the information. I already know in my mind, I already have a plan set for the possibility of having children when I do, like, and I might not execute it in a perfect way, but I already have a plan. Whereas most of the people I know, they just, we having a baby, and it pops out, and then you just roll with the punches instead of rolling with the blueprint that you've already created.
That exactly.
But
it's okay.
Yeah.
And it's okay. I think again, sometimes when you do things differently, you don't want to be outcasted. So you have to be firm in your reasons of why you want to do it, and know that it's okay. And you might be alone for a little bit until you kind of find your village and find those people, but that's okay, because it's for the greater good of what you want for your kids and what you want for your family. So it's okay to be different. It's okay to do things different. And it's just, that's hard. That's hard for a lot of people.
So Keisha Williams has a question. She says, how does homeschooling affect extracurricular opportunities? She says, my nephews are athletes and would still want to play, also musicians and bands. So how does that work with students that want to do extracurricular activities, but they are homeschooled?
Sure. So in most cases, they can still participate in those extracurricular activities. It's just a matter of contacting the school. They can still try out for sports teams and still be eligible to make the cut. I know, like I said, once you get to high school, they want you enrolled in at least one class. So, if it's a math class, typically, you can enroll in that math class or that science class. But those are things that you can still be involved with. For sure, with the school. It's just a matter of contacting them. Two of my sons were in speech class. And so they were still taking speech this past year, even though we were homeschooling, because those services are still available to us because we live in the township. So it's just a matter of contacting the school or the potential township that they're in, just to double check. But on the Indiana Department of Education website, it will spell it out for you that, they have to be enrolled in at least one class, and, they should still be able to give a fair chance to try out to do those extracurricular activities.
I wonder how prevalent that is.
I don't know. I know a couple people that are older than me that said, yeah, I remember a couple people I played football with that were homeschooled. So it's been around for a while. Again, it's just that something that's not common. And I think people, again, some people just don't know. And so they don't figure that it's an option. So they figure, well, they just need to go to school in order to have these opportunities. And then with sports too, you've got to think sports are so much bigger than playing at school, even though it's awesome to play at school, right? Because you're kind of around some people, but there's club teams, there's so many other ways to get exposure, especially if you're thinking like, I really want to play this sport in college. You're going to get a little bit more exposure when you're playing and traveling places on these club teams than you might get just playing at your local high school. So again, you just have to be open to the whole concept of it.
So wait a minute. Stop the press. You just opened up some. So basically what you're telling me is you don't need public schools.
I mean, depending on what you're doing, you really don't.
You just explained to me. Let me go back through my notes so I make sure I got this right. Okay. You graduate quicker from high school. You graduate quicker from college. You retain information longer. The colleges are looking at you, but even if you wanted to be a professional NBA player, it would be better for you to get with these group teams. That way you're traveling, because I know that the scouts are going to be at the AA games and all this other stuff. I mean, they're going to be at the high school games too, but you really have to be like a really exceptional player. But if you want to be the best, you have to play with the best, and the best from my knowledge, from just the friends of mine that play sports and that are intertwined into sports and their kids are, it is with those teams that travel.
Because you're getting tons of exposure. You're in environments that you're not going to get exposed to being in Indianapolis. Like, there's only so much you can do here in Indianapolis. But if I'm traveling to Louisville, and if I'm traveling to Florida, and if I'm traveling to Texas, and if I'm traveling here, Cincinnati, I'm going to all these different places. I'm seeing these different players, different coaches. I remember playing volleyball. And even my daughter, when she played, and just being other places, other coaches coming up to you being like, hey, I saw how you played earlier, like I would have never met that person, playing at my high school team, because they're not in my state. So you're getting so many other ways to be exposed to various opportunities that you're not going to get.
Oh my God. My mind has been blown. My mind has been blown today. Who want to make a baby with Jamille Harley? No, I'm just
playing. What? Goodbye, sir.
Stop it. Stop it. But hey, we're gonna wrap this up. I'm sorry I held you for so long. This has been a really great information. Let the listeners know how they can get in contact with you on your social medias.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're more interested in homeschool life, it's actually on my personal page. So if you're going to request me as a friend on my personal page, can you just send me like a note? Because people have all these different names and I don't know who they are. And it's Aimbriel. So my first name, Aimbriel Chantel, Chantel, Aimbriel Chantel. And that's where I post a lot about my homeschool journey. If you're wanting to know more about veganism or plant-based recipes mixed in with a little bit of homeschooling, then that's Black Mama Vegan. On Instagram, it's Black_Mama, M-A-M-A Vegan. And then on Facebook, it's Black Mama Vegan. But my Instagram feeds right through to my Facebook, so you're going to catch most of everything that I post. And then if you're interested, I got a whole lot going on. If you're interested in learning more about Black maternal health, breastfeeding, family planning, those types of things, then you're going to catch me at Holistic Lactation Care. So I wear lots of different hats.
And that's great. That's a good thing. But we're gonna sign off right here. I want to thank you for taking the time to join me and my listeners, because this has been a very informative interview. And
for sure.
I'm gonna go back through and rewind this and take notes for when I have a baby at 75. And I'm
you know what? I ain't gonna be able to help you. I ain't gonna be able to help you.
Well, I want to thank you again for joining, and thank all my listeners and everybody that has joined in on this live. This is Jamille Harley and the Audacity Show, and we were live with Aimbriel Lasley.
Yay.